Okay.
Are we live? We're
Yes,
live.
we are.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to
Hi.
Raising
Raising
hell.
Hell from to Heaven. Um, that was
You
terrible.
got me more excited about that part.
I was excited about it. I'm ex I'm excited about today's episode. Um, my whole face has gone red now. Anyway, we have today on our podcast someone who I am very honored to call friend, um, Joe Van Niekerk. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm just going to give you a quick little introduction, Joe, and then we're going to jump in. So,
Beautiful.
Joe was a former Springbok rugby player, powerhouse on the field. Okay, so I hear. And really this is your whole journey of, a man who has walked through the fire of transformation, and that fire of personal transformation is a hot one. From that fast-paced life to this deep spiritual journey that you went on. Oh my God, excuse me. I think we have to start this again, guys. I'm not joking. I forgot to switch my phone off. I'm so sorry.
Okay, just restart
Okay, we're gonna start it again and we're gonna delete that beginning. Okay, so
it. Okay.
Okay.
welcome everyone to
Raising
Raising
hell.
Hell to Heaven.
To heaven.
We have a very special, yeah, that's it. It's Raising Hell to Heaven. Um, we have a special guest with us today. Someone who I'm very honored to call friend, Joe Van Niekerk. Yeah, Joe. I think today, many of you who don't know, Joe was a former Springbok rugby player, and I think the main reason why we wanted to get you on today was because you've lived this incredible life from, like very high performance sports to coming full circle into that deep spiritual transformation. And what it was like, to walk through that fire of personal transformation, into, from like, also from that partying lifestyle, pro sport partying, into this deeply spiritual life that is rooted in healing and truth and service to others. So yeah, in this episode, that's what we're going to explore. Joe's incredible journey from stadium lights to the stillness of the jungle. Um, and I would love it if we could talk about, letting go of identity, letting go of your old story, healing, not just your story, but healing your body and soul and healing the father wounds, embracing the wisdom of nature, and just really stepping into, as you have, conscious fatherhood, like sacred leadership, because I feel like now you're really embodying, like we talk a lot about king energy and embodying that. And I know your partner often says she called in her king, and I feel like you're in that energy. So yeah, welcome to the podcast. It's really great to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's a great honor to be here today with both of you. And I just want to say that I'm actually awe-inspired by you, Kate, because of the way that you show up and the way that you share your truth. And I think that every time I see you there, I'm just like, wow, that's so inspiring, in the way that you show up and the way that you share your truth. And I think that, obviously hitting on certain very deep topics, right, around, the mother wound, the father wound, as you mentioned, the identity, this identity that we build up over years. And in our minds, we think we are this identity. And it's just so interesting to really contemplate that and to sit with that. And that question that comes is, who am I? Who am I? Beyond even your name, right? Because we get given a name. As we come out, we get given this name. And so I think that for me, part of my journey was that self-inquiry into who am I? Because for so many years, right, you'd built this career up, you'd been going for things, you'd been succeeding, you'd been getting achievements in the world, and really building up an identity as like, you know, Joe, the rugby player kind of thing. And so not truly really knowing who you are, but having this idea of who you are. And even from a perspective of like our image, right? Like, you know, the image is just that, right? But beyond image, beyond form, who are we? And so I think that for every person that's coming to some kind of transition in their life, they should really contemplate that question. Who am I beyond all of this? Because, you know, it's like that saying, Ram Dass, he says, we're God in drag. And I'm just hearing a bit of static. I don't know if you guys are hearing that too. I don't know what is it.
I don't know what
I thought that was the birds.
It sounds like a cricket. I'm like, shit,
it's
if
like-
it's a cricket.
Are you in Costa Rica right now?
I know, we should be.
That's so weird. Anyway, let's go with crickets.
could it be your mic
gone.
moving, like a cord or something?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I just heard like this. It's kind of subsided a little now, but it was going really hard at some point, and it's still kind of there.
You can still kind of hear that. There, it's back.
I'm not sure if it will be,
That
if
is-
it'll affect. Yeah, there. It's changing. It was changing.
Let's see if we.
This is fine.
There. What was that?
There. You got it. Yeah, that was it.
Well,
Whatever that was. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Don't know how.
Should we just carry on? Will you guys cut this, or
Yes. Yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah.
We will edit this.
or do you want to start from the beginning again? We can...
Don't make me do that.
I love seeing you do that introduction. You know what I mean?
So cross because I forgot the part about the fire, and I was like, "What did I say?"
No, it was great. It was really good. It was really good.
You
Yeah.
tried my hardest. No, so I think let's just keep rolling. Like, who am I beyond the noise?
Okay. Yeah, so really towards the end of my rugby playing days, I, you know, not conventionally went into like continued as a rugby analyst or continued in the rugby echelons and that kind of path. I kind of went outside of that because I had been feeling this deep kind of, well, initially straight after I finished playing, I woke up with inflammation all in my body. And that was after a big Joel out that night. We went for a big party and every cell in my body was just like, I cannot do this, categorically cannot do this anymore. And I woke up the next day and I just had inflammation in my body. And I said, that is it. That is the moment that I stop with all these chemicals. And it was from that moment on that I just started the search into self-discovery and trying to figure out, like, who am I literally beyond all of these things. And that was about 10 years ago I started that journey. So that took me to the jungles of Costa Rica, where I sat with plant medicine for the first time. And those journeys were just absolutely immense and epic. And I literally, on my third ceremony, because I'd done like 3 ceremonies within a retreat week, and I came to my third ceremony, and I'd literally been keeping the medicine inside of me for 2 ceremonies, because it was a little Peruvian woman. She was the shaman, and she looked at me and she said, "Keep the medicine inside of you." And how I interpreted that was that I've got to literally keep this medicine inside and I mustn't purge. So for like 2 ceremonies consecutively, I just kept the medicine in me. So I felt like waves of bliss, waves of nausea, and I just been keeping the medicine in me. And then eventually I got to this last ceremony, and there was a brother that was next to me, an American guy. His name was Jay. And he goes, "Joe, just get it out, bro. Just get it out." And I got up, I stumbled to the door, and I looked at the fire outside, and I just walked to the fire, and I just projectile vomited like out. and it was literally didn't stop. And it felt like it was years and years and years of carnage that was leaving my body. And I literally got down on my knees and I started to, as I was, purging, this little guy facilitator came to me and he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "You are the light, my brother. You are the light." I'm looking at it and I'm like literally dripping from every orifice. And I'm just like, what the fuck am I doing? And I'm just like purging. And then as I'm purging, I realized like I just started to weep and started to cry. And in that moment, this like feeling of forgiveness for self, forgiveness for all the actions that I wasn't proud of. And then also just this prayer that came to me that was like forgiveness for me, but also for everyone else that had done wrong to me, or that I perceived to be done wrong by, or that I had done wrong to. And it was almost like this really cathartic moment that I felt like all of the years of carnage, that build up of all of it, all the toxicity, all of the pharmaceutical drugs, everything that had been like part of the partying, everything for 15 years of my life had just left my body. Well, at least a big part of it had left. And I literally like looked up at the sky and I was looking at the universe in a completely different way. It was just like I was actually felt like I was connected to the stars. I was connected to everything around me. And it was just like, it's just one of those moments that you really just, I'll never forget it, because it was just so, so vivid and real and palpable. And that was basically when my healing journey really began. And so, that's where it all started for me.
Well, thank you for your vulnerability and for sharing that with us. It's just, it's incredible to see someone come out at all, right, of that fast-paced lifestyle. I grew up in LA, so I've been around a lot of it, and I feel like I've had times in my life where I think, well, why didn't I get further? And then I realized like it was a blessing, and that I was protected from a lot of the darkness of especially within the music industry, and the movie industry, and you hear these stories. And so I can understand how kind of getting out of that and completely changing your life to go a different path. It's a very extreme path to take and switch to make, right? So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for your vulnerability.
Thank you, Charles.
Yeah.
It's like you say, it was really like a 360-degree turn in a different direction. And I think that like I got to that point of unbearable suffering where I realized that, like, as I said, every cell in my body was literally like categorically against actually going out, because actually at that point our team had won everything. So our team won the European Cup, it won the domestic competition. So that's like basically like the UEFA Cup for rugby. And so they were all partying, but I wasn't part of the team. I didn't play those last two games. So I was just really like already starting my healing journey of like not wanting to engage in that. And then they were all phoning me saying, "Come on, man, one last party." And I was just like, okay, I got to do it. So I went through it. But as I say, like when you know in your body, physically, like you feel every single cell in your body is just like, I cannot categorically do this, but you kind of do it. And then thereafter, I think that the aftermath was just this inflammation, raging inflammation in the body. And then the realization that, oh, okay, that is it. Now I draw a line in the sand. I will not now go that route any longer. And as you say, that was like then a 360 in the opposite direction of just like wanting to nurture self, wanting to look after yourself, wanting to nourish yourself, wanting to give yourself everything that you had missed in those years when you were just like a machine, having to show up, smash people, and then go home. And it's like, or smash people, go party, and then go home. Like that whole process, that cycle, having stopped that was just, it was in a lot of ways, it was a big blessing towards the end, because it was just like, I could now honor myself, you know, and really honor my soul.
It's almost as if, like, when you say that, because if you think of like the typical rugby player, I mean, like if you look at, I mean, you are also like, you're really tall, and like it's, you think that that is like the embodiment of masculinity, but it almost sounds to me like when you were going through that period in those years, it was like you were performing that masculinity rather than embodying it like you do now.
Mm,
So
yeah,
what would
it's
you
just
say like the difference is?
yeah. I think now it's a different kind of journey. I feel like there were a lot of traits and a lot of like traits that came through, like abilities that came through. In one of those words that comes to mind now is discipline. Is taking that discipline into your spiritual path. Because as you both know, like showing up on a daily basis in terms of whatever spiritual practices you engage in, how crucial that is in terms of like balancing yourself and like being able to navigate this wild matrix that we're in. So it's like, there's certain traits I believe that came from playing that such a masculine sport, and like some of those attributes that came through into the spiritual path. But then if you ask me, so I believe that masculine energy now that I carry is different in the sense that my heart feels a lot more gentle and a lot more soft, and I can also embrace my feminine. I think that for so many years as a rugby player, we've been told that, you've got to be strong. And what does that mean essentially in sport? It means don't show your emotion, because you can show it potentially at the end of the game. But then essentially when you're up against someone and you've got to beat them and you've got to competitively smash them, you don't show emotion, right? You're kind of like, you're taught in a way to like be strong, and from a very young age. So you kind of, any emotion that arises, you're very used to dealing with that emotion and almost sometimes suppressing how you feel. And so now what I would say is that it's the embodiment of feeling those emotions, as opposed to suppressing or pushing them aside or avoiding them, but more so embodying that, feeling what's there to be felt. And then, just so, I don't know if I answered your question now, but
Well, I think
Yeah.
it's really incredible to like, because you don't think about, as viewers, like I grew up in the arts, right? So my competitive field is all emotion, right? But you don't think about the emotional side or lack thereof of extreme sports, right? Like I think to myself, it's incredible what they're doing as far as what they're putting their bodies through and how much they're accomplishing, and the discipline, and it's very masculine and this and that. And literally until this, I've never really taken the time to think about what that would do to your mental health.
Excuse me. I don't know how it's still happening. My phone is on flight mode. I'm so sorry.
You got to put your computer on flight mode.
It's on.
Um,
How do you put? Okay.
I'll teach you later.
Ah,
But
I'm
yeah, I never
sorry.
really thought about what comes with that and the mental toll in order to compete at that level. You do think, I do watch sports and think, how are they mentally, emotionally handling being in front of thousands of people right now while competing for something, while, you know what I mean? And I always kind of like chopped it up to, well, they must just repeatedly, because it's so repetitive, you get used to being in front of a crowd, you do it every day. You're doing so many games during seasons that it's like, it must just become second nature. But I never really realized or understood, like what you mentioned, that element of having to not show weakness because of the other team. You're truly suppressing your emotions. Like, if anything, I think that what they probably, and God knows, like, the sports world would never, but in a perfect world, right, they would then take the athletes after a game and be like, let's give you, let's have a spa session, like go to therapy, like talk about, let all that stuff out that we're telling you to shut up and deal with it on the field, like let it all out after. because it's gonna go somewhere. And that's probably why, partially too, it comes back to I'm hearing the thing again as well.
Mm.
That's probably why it comes back down to drugs and partying and girls, because what's really happening is it's a volcano and it needs somewhere to go. Those emotions, those feelings. And so we numb ourselves with substance, with love, with more substance, with partying, with keeping ourselves busy. I know that's a big thing we do in LA that it took me years to realize. It's like that's another form of numbing, is just staying busy, and it can be with good things too. So
Mm.
if you're in that lifestyle and just constantly moving and performing and just going, you don't give yourself a second to stop and think, and almost like intentionally, I feel like. So yeah, no, that's just, I mean, it's really incredible how you were able to, on your own, be like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I often also wonder, like, what does an athlete do after you won all the games? Like, once you hit that top line, especially with athletes. And because I see a lot of, especially, being in LA, I see a lot of like ex NFL players and this and that. I know one in particular, amazing guy who's a personal trainer, and his whole life is about health. And
Mm.
I think that is how he's done well after, because he gets up at 5 a.m. He does not touch alcohol. He does not go party. He just, like, he's very regimented. And he took that same regiment that he had in sports and has put it into personal training and like helping and inspiring people. But I feel like that's just very, very rare. Most people, they hit this peak high and then it's like, now what? Now where do we go? So what would you say to, like, not necessarily, both for men that are looking to really tap into that masculinity in a healthy way? What is like one or two of the things that you found have been able to, like, have been great tools for you to be able to do that? And then also for anyone that is in extreme, I mean, let's be honest, like, it's almost a male trait to be very like extreme and go, because you guys are providers, right? You go hard for something. So like, what would you also say is like a healthy way of handling after, once you get to that point where you're like, I can't survive at this forever. Where do
Mm.
I go for here? What are the next steps to getting to a healthy, like, what are some, things that you did to, number one, own your healthy masculinity and move into that healthy masculinity, and just move into like a healthy mental place?
Yeah, I think that yeah, it dawns upon all professional athletes when they come to their career, end of their careers, and I would say that they should start to find something which they're passionate about while they're still involved with the sport. It can be quite difficult because you sacrifice basically your whole life. Every single hour is dedicated to the sport, so it can be difficult. But I do find that if you find something that you're really passionate about, that you can move into, because what happens is that that sport takes up so much of your life and so much of your time, and literally every moment is dedicated to the sport. And when that goes away, it's a big chunk that leaves. It's almost like a part of yourself dies, right? So it's how can you replace that with some kind of passion that you actually wake up every morning, just like your friend. He wakes up every morning, he's got his routine, he's got his structure, he's got certain systems in place that he knows if he sticks to those things, it makes him probably feel safe. And that is also one of the ways in which you can then when you go through a transition like that, which is very difficult, where part of you dies, is to actually step into something that you are supremely passionate about, that you love, that when you wake up in the morning, you feel alive to go and do that thing. So for me, as an example, like, I continue to do yoga practice, and I find through that yogic practice, it gives me that hour, just that hour in my day where I am dedicating that hour to myself. And through that dedication, it creates a rhythm of like showing up for myself, but also keeps me kind of in a routine. For me, particularly, and being through sport, routine is a crucial thing. Like I love routine and I love being in routine, and routine also, I know why now. It's because it makes me feel safe. When I've got a specific routine, then I know, okay, it's almost as if I'm working to something, but I'm actually not, if that makes sense. But it's like, and so that gives me the structure to work within. So to answer your question around that, I would say definitely find a passion, find something that you love, that you can dedicate your life to, because when that sport goes, then there's a whole new chapter that opens up. And then it's like, what is it that you really are like, that makes you feel alive in the morning when you get up? So that, and then to answer your around the healthy masculinity, Rao, that's been a long journey, I think. One word that just keeps coming up right now is integrity. I think that for me is one of the cornerstones of a healthy masculine energy, is a man with integrity. What does that mean? It means that his thoughts, words, and deeds are aligned, that when he speaks and he speaks something, he follows through on the action of that thing. And that doesn't necessarily mean that all the thoughts have to be aligned in truth, right? Like we have 60,000 thoughts a day. So that would be silly to say. But what it does truly mean is that alignment of truth with inside yourself. And I think that we all know what that means, because morally, just from a moral perspective, yeah, we may say we have different morals, but essentially in our hearts, we know what can be, whether we see it as wrong or right? Or for us, what is wrong or right. And so for me, one of the cornerstones of a healthy masculine energy is integrity. How you hold yourself, but also following through on what you say and through action is a very powerful thing to live by, I feel, because it's not always easy, right? But when you do live like that and you do have that within your being and thinking that, then that is one of the things that I think that really helps to be a healthy masculine energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Thank you. Yeah. I think that's huge, right? I mean, my dad is not perfect either, nor is any man, but one thing that he always said was, our word is all we have. And that has stuck with me. And so in the end of the day, I'm like, I can mess up left and right. But the moment I break my word, like I'm not getting it back. Something that I can, So and I respect men that every single time, even if it's like, for me, a big thing, especially that we're lacking in today's, and I was just going off about it yesterday, but today's culture and today's, I don't want to say youth. I'm not really young anymore, but like kind of young, like 20 to 40, like the people that should be doing adulting by now, what we're lacking is that accountability. And the reality of it is, because of social media, there's no one's going to call you out on your crap. You can get away with murder and like no one's going to know. Like you don't have to, you can ask a girl out, or tell a guy you're going to show up and just not do it. And no one's going to know except for that person. And so people cower and hide behind a screen. But what I don't think that they're realizing, and then they wonder, like, why don't I feel masculine? And women wonder, why don't I feel respected? It's like, because you're losing the heart and the core of what makes us human, which is our word and our integrity, and being people that are, just what encompasses a good person, right? And I believe there's good in all of us, but I think that's the difference, is in the end of the day, being able to say, hey, I can't show up, or I just don't actually have these feelings. My social battery is actually empty. Being able to have the strength to say those things, I think, is what really makes a man, and makes, also goes for women as well, makes a good woman. And so, yeah, thank you for sharing. That was beautifully, beautifully put.
Thank you.
I think that's in a lot of what
Yeah.
we teach, though, because we're all coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Mm, mm,
We're all coaches, and incidentally, we all coach men. Um,
mm,
and a lot of those guys are carrying these silent, like, wounds.
Yeah.
Because of things like, I love the idea of, you've got to be impeccable with your word for agreements,
mm,
but when that's not followed through with action, we're
mm,
living in this very like wounded world. Firstly, hurt people, but then also what you were speaking to earlier about men who just have had to like be strong and like not
mm,
feel. And it's, I love that like you now from being that person, you've become who you needed. And that's like who you now help lead is men who are going through that same thing. So, like, what do you think from your perspective? I'm curious to know, like, what men are like starving for beneath the surface of success, of fitness, of control. There's so many layers to that because we can layer on success and we can layer on like fitness and control, but underneath, we're, these broken people carrying these wounds,
mm,
and we're staying silent about it.
mm. Yeah, it's like when you mentioned around the wounding, that's the big thing. I think that, it starts for me with vulnerability, the vulnerability piece of like being able to step into a space, whether that's with other men or whether you're in a coaching relationship like this, but to feel like you're being held in that space, but in a loving, kind way and a compassionate way. And then then a lot of men are able to like really dip into that place where they feel vulnerable. And as soon as they start to get vulnerable about their lives, then the magic can happen. But if they aren't prepared to be vulnerable and they're still wearing that mask and like holding things and not capable of like actually letting go or being able to look for the first time, that's a big thing. You mentioned the wounding. I think that stems into 99.9% of the time, it stems into, certain patterns. And that's also related to like, say someone's had a trauma. It's not necessarily the actual traumatic event, but it's thereafter, like what do those patterns mean for them in their life? So as an example, like the nervous system then goes into like a protective mechanism in terms of like events that happen thereafter. So working with specifically with men or with women, I think that it stems back to our childhoods all the time. And that's the other thing. It's not about reliving those traumatic events, but it is about giving yourself a voice in those times. And a lot of times it relates to the limbic brain, which is the oldest part of our brain, right? And that part of the brain that needed emotional safety, that needed security, that needed love, that needed, needed to be seen. I think that's a huge one. And I love to mention this about relationships too, that in many relationships, a lot of the problems come and stem from not being seen, not being understood, and not being heard. So if you can just look at your partner and just see them and say, even just out of the blue, just recognize them for whatever it is, for their kindness, for the way that they show up, for whatever it is, you will be going a long way in, having a beautiful, healthy relationship. Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent. But I think that what I wanted to mention is that it goes back to those unmet needs. And I think that within men and women, we have specific unmet needs. So as an example, if my father never saw me, he never recognized me, I'm going to be constantly looking for his approval. And as I grow, I will be constantly looking. So I'm going to get into this process of actually becoming overproductive. And at some point in time, I will burn out. But that's where our roles come in, right? Is to help the people to identify like, oh, okay, I see this destructive pattern. And how can I create a strategy so that I don't fall straight into that pattern again? So for me, generally with men and women, it stems back to childhood. And then also to all those unmet needs, 99% of the time, but then also into how the nervous system, how we can release that charge from the nervous system. through body work or through somatic practice or through whatever healing modality you use. But yeah, I feel like, as you mentioned around the masculine, I think that there's definitely wounding, and it's almost like we create these armors around ourselves, like we wear these armors that whatever that's related to, as you mentioned, whether it's about being a macho man or it's about being a strong man, and then we never really step into these spaces where we can actually fully show ourselves, and we can just be open and honest and vulnerable and just allow. And that's why I think men's work is so crucial. Just having brotherhood, brotherhood is so powerful. Coming into spaces where you feel like you can be vulnerable and you can just share, like, whatever, like I killed someone, so like, as an example, like I actually, like, I murdered someone, I killed someone, like, and I went to prison for that, as an example. Like, some of these stories are just like so intense, but having a space to be heard in that way, I think, is also very, very healing.
Yeah.
100%. I'm a community over everything. We've seen just some incredible. We've done some group work, and not a lot, because at first my fear was like, they're not going to want to share in front of each other because they're not like women. But then when they do, it's like, wow. Just in the way they hold each other emotionally and are like, thank you, dude. Like, you're doing a great job, bro. Like, and we didn't ask it of them. They just did it because there is that need, right? There is that need to be heard, to be seen, held by other men. Because I think that, as a society, we are so hard on men, and men are hard on each other, and women are hard on each other. And there's like this constant competition to be strong enough, to be macho enough, to be enough, right? So I think, and we definitely encourage that. And so I guess that's another question for me, that I would love to ask you. Like, where would you encourage guys to go to get this kind of companionship? But that's one of the biggest questions. I always get people asking, like, well, where do I find a high value partner? And my number one thing is, it's not where you are physically, it's where you are emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And then it doesn't matter where you are. When you meet the person, you'll either know or not know. But where would you encourage men to go to meet other like-minded men?
Well, I've got a dear brother in Scotland who holds. He's actually holding a 4-month container with men. So they do like 2 retreats, sacred retreats, and then they've got like online sessions. I think weekly online sessions. I know it's called Man Alive. It's a very powerful process without actually any kind of medicines, any natural medicines, anything. It's just all healing modalities that the men go through, and very, very powerful container to be in. I think that, as you mentioned, and as you were talking now, it really comes clear for me what it actually is. It's a lot of the men feel isolated, and that they don't have this brotherhood that they can really connect with, and even if it's not brotherhood, like it's also like, as coaches, right? It's like us to be able to hold the space for men, and to be able to, for them to have that sacred space where they can go and they can be vulnerable and they can share their deepest emotions. A lot of times, including myself, right? Like, I was brought up very much not connected to my emotion, because my mom was not connected to her emotion. What I mean by that is, her father, she had a big father wound. Her father never expressed or showed his emotion. And so she grew up not knowing truly how to express her emotions, and really thinking like more like coming from a logical perspective and a kind of a mind perspective, but not connected to emotion. And so when I grew up, I had the same kind of a pattern in me around emotion. And so I think that for a lot of men out there, it can be very difficult for them to actually even locate and to figure out like what is this emotion and even put a name to it. A lot of times we say certain things around feelings, but they're actually non-feelings. They're not feelings. Like we may say, I feel abandoned, but abandoned is not a feeling. A feeling is like, I feel frustrated, kind of thing. So, or I feel alone, so there's certain feelings and non-feelings. And why am I saying that? I'm just saying that because I think that we're so disconnected from that that we don't even know that we express non-feelings, And so it's interesting that when you do come onto this path and you start to realize like, wait, if I feel what's in my body, if I feel what's coming up for me in this moment, like I'm actually doing myself a great service because I'm feeling what's in there and I'm not avoiding or pushing it down or suppressing it or ignoring it or getting distracted, as you said, Chelsea, that distraction, right? So I think that these spiritual practices and really allow us to then to start to explore like what's actually going on in our physiology and how it actually operates and the mechanism of mind and the mechanism of emotion and feelings and sensation and all of it,
That is why I am such a big advocate for breath work, because I feel like when you go through these traumas, you check out of your body, you're not there. And breath work puts you back here. And it's like, wow, hey, what a journey with breath work and actually starting to tap into those feelings. And what I love about it is that it's not forced. What your body is ready to release is going to come up in a session. And that could be anything, any memory from childhood, from yesterday, from, it's so beautiful because it's teaching us again to trust our body's innate wisdom. Like we want to heal. Our bodies have got this, and I think it also helps, like speaking to what we were just circling back a little bit. And then I do want to touch on the relationship stuff because that's a key wound for everybody. But that idea of being vulnerable and actually like what the real strength is in vulnerability and in your ability to be soft. I feel like vulnerability and softness are the same. And I think I'd be interested to hear your perspective as a man, what it takes, because I know as a woman what it takes for me to feel safe, but like, what would you say as a man who's done this work now and who also guides people through it? What does it take for a man to actually feel safe enough to soften? And how do we better as people? I mean, as coaches, that's one thing. How do we create space in our work? But, as a community, how do we create that space for men to feel safe?
That's such a beautiful question. Yeah, feel safe enough to soften. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful question. I think that there are many variables to this. As I say, can I speak from my perspective? How I create safety is through routine in some sense. So as I mentioned before, but that is also a strategy. So how can we create safety inside ourselves? Well, we firstly have to notice when we feel unsafe. And so, as you mentioned, the breath works one way to become breath aware. So to be aware of your breath. And when your breath changes, when your breath becomes more shallow, then you know that, oh, wait, maybe I'm feeling unsafe in this moment. Or specifically, what would be your cue in your body for when you feel unsafe? And just in knowing that, then you can obviously use specific tools to be able to then bring yourself back into a regulated state. So I would say all of these modalities that we're working on are essential because through that process, someone may have we all have a need for safety, right? That's a universal need, actually. So to feel unsafe in any particular moment, we have to become aware of what's happening in our physiology, what's happening in your body, what's going on, where are you feeling that? And then once we become professional at like seeing what's going on within our body, then we can bring in some of the tools to be able to bring us into that safety. But I feel like a lot of times it's our inner child. It's that little Joe, it's that little Kate that's like coming up and saying, "Oh, I don't feel safe in this moment." Whether that's with a partner, with a relationship, in a situation, whatever environment that you're in, that little one may be presenting itself in that moment. And that's where I think, and maybe a lot of people out there, and I'm just actually making an assumption now, but maybe people think that, the inner child and that work is kind of woohoo, spiritual woohoo in some way. But I feel like that's something that a lot of men could explore. A lot of men, because imagine that they're not even aware that it's a psychological reality, that your inner child is a psychological reality within your being, right? So if you become aware of that, then you can actually tap into that I've even noticed this within relationship. I notice where my little inner child comes up and he's like, "Oh, I'm not being seen in this moment. What the flip's going on?" And then I go into a sulk. Or I say, "Oh, well, fine, whatever." And I can't even, I'm like disassociated. I can't even hear what my partner's saying, kind of thing. So, and then she's answering back from her inner child. And I've actually witnessed this, right? Like going back and forth. We're speaking both to our inner childs, like not being seen. So it's like, "Oh, I'm not seeing you. You're not seeing me." But so to answer your question, because it is a very loaded question and beautiful question, is that I believe that it's the exploration into these tools. It's also recognizing, when do I feel unsafe? Okay, well, you may say, "Joe, man, if I go down into this neighborhood, I feel unsafe." Okay, yeah, that's fine. You notice when you feel unsafe. What's happening in your physiology? And so it could be the same thing within relationship, is that once you start to create these connections, and especially the connection with your inner child, then you can start to actually become more aware and self-aware of what is happening in your physiology, and then regulate with certain tools through when you realize that's taking place.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question slightly? Maybe not the community
That
part of
does.
it.
No, that does.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. Go, Chels.
Well, I want to take it one further too, because we do get a lot of relationship questions, and I love what you just hit on, because I was picturing it in my mind too, like when all of a sudden the fight actually becomes two little kids being like, "I don't want to," all of a sudden it changes really the whole dynamic when you start
Yeah.
really seeing it that way, and that's really truly what's going on. I can't remember exactly where it was, but I remember like it was just a couple days ago. I was just so keenly aware of, like, I am a 5-year-old girl right now. Like, I am in that space, completely over there. Like, I don't know what it was, but being able to be aware of, this is actually what's happening right now. She's feeling like this, so it really doesn't matter. And I think it was probably something to, I don't know, something to do with something. It was like, it really doesn't matter what anyone thinks or says or sees about this body right now, because that little girl is feeling it. That little girl is taking on the same judgment that she took in first grade or whenever it was. It comes to a male female dynamic. What I notice more and more in my own dating life, even with my father and my mother, and seeing their dynamic, but in seeing other dating relationships, most of the time, and probably because society tells men to just muscle it out, right? When guys are experiencing anything that is uncomfy, probably mostly things that are unsafe, but I've noticed more and more is girls will receive a guy retreating as he doesn't want me. But I'm starting to notice more and more and more that that is simply not the case. And sometimes it'll be years later, this person comes back into your life and they're like, "I thought you didn't like me," or "I was going through something," or there's numbers of reasons, right? But the lack of communication, right? And there's not very much you can do with that. So that's kind of what I'm wondering from a female point of view, because most of the time, what I will tell girls is like, there is nothing you can do. You can't squeeze blood from a turnip, right? If they just don't want to talk to you, you have to just give them their space, and when they're ready, they will come back and tell you what was actually going on, which there's no way you can know. But if you have any like kind of sort of suggestions as what you would to say to a woman and how to get a man who isn't responsive, who, because, and it's constant, it's all over the internet, right? Like when a guy goes silent, when a guy pulls back, when a guy, 9 million ways to say when he's not talking to you anymore because he has gone into his little shell, right? And it can be because of anything, but it's because the world has told them to shut up and just handle it. So instead of I'm scared or I feel rejected or millions of different reasons. And so us girls are over here going in our brains, filling in the blanks with everything we can come up with. And our first two things that we're thinking is, I'm not pretty enough. I'm not smart enough. He saw something I posted and he didn't like it. We're taking all the blame on ourselves when it could literally be anything else. But that's where our brains go first, and we go into our little, they didn't want to play handball with me. That's what I'm.
Goes into our self-worth.
Exactly. So what would you suggest in that place? Should girls just let him go and when he's ready he comes back, or is there something that you would suggest to do that would make them feel more safe and more ready to open up?
Do you mind if I turn on this light?
No, yeah, go ahead.
For it.
A bit bright, but better maybe.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I believe that when we start to comprehend, because also then we can look into like through NVC, nonviolent communication, we can start to look at the stress responses, right? So if your partner is flighting from that situation, if he's basically leaving the conversation, then you know that his initial primary stress response is to flight. Most of us carry 2, right? Some people carry 3 of the stress responses. One of them is to appease, so that's people pleasing. One of them is to fight, one of them is to flight, and one of them is to freeze. So you mentioned the flight and the freeze there. So if you're getting a bit of flighting and freezing, or you're getting freezing and then flighting, then you know that those are his stress responses. So he won't be able to like answer you in that moment. A lot of times, the fighter, as an example, wants to get an answer and wants to resolve things quickly. But so let's just say we have a fighter and we have a flighter, right? The fighter is the woman and the flighter is the man. Okay, and let's just say that those are their primary responses, right? So this fighter is like now bringing up a topic, and this flighter is like, no, I ain't answering that. I'm out of here. Okay, but why am I telling you that? Because if you comprehend that, in your partner, that their primary response in stress is that they flight, and then probably secondly, maybe they freeze, or they can flight, either way. But then you can navigate it in a better way. And you can say, because if let's just say that you're in a conversation with that person and you get into the stress, right? And you can see that they start to get stressed because you've dropped something on them that is a loaded question that they're like, what? And they flight. In that moment, if you know what their primary stress response is, then you can be like, okay, cool, just give him space. Just let him go. It's all good. And even if you are a fighter and want to resolve that, but for your relationship and for the betterment of your relationship, if you comprehend that, then you can go, okay, wait, I can step back here, I can give him his space, and he will come back when he's ready, and we'll have a conversation together and we'll sort this thing out, right? And so I think that it's really comprehending your partner on a deeper level. And when you do that, when you start to investigate and explore these things, then you start to see how they play out. And then you can navigate them in a much better way. Because it's true, in that aspect, in that instant, you want to solve that. You want to figure that out in that moment. But essentially, when someone is in a stress response, whether they're freezing or flighting, they are not going to be able to solve solve that solution or find the solution.
That is powerful stuff. And it's so true. And I feel like it actually just boils down to we come into relationship, right? And we come with all our old wounds. I was saying this the other day. You can do all the solo work you want on yourself. Like this is something like I'm experiencing. I'm sure, Joe, you went through this when you like got into relationship. When you're in like a real conscious relationship and you've done the work, all that other stuff starts showing up. And it's it's crazy. It's like you feel
Yeah.
all the old responses that want to come up, and it is. I am a flighter. I'm a flighter and I'm a freezer. And I've noticed in me how I just have to just stop and I'm like, and my partner is amazing. He's so like gentle and he's so like, it's okay. Like, what do you need? But it's also showing me how before I just used to take and it was just like I'm in a trauma response and I need this and I'm not going to give you that. And it's when that urge comes up to want to do that again, like staying and communicating. Like I thought I was good at communicating until I entered a relationship again. It's like I don't want to talk about it, you know? Oh my gosh.
And it's
Yeah.
interesting too, I think, because I think that it really like it depends on the dynamic too, within the relationship, because I don't know if what you know about this, but what I've experienced and what I've seen with different people, and even with Kate and I's dynamic when I was there, um, sometimes we are the fight and free or the flight type, and sometimes we're the fight type. Like different sides of us are brought out with different people, because with certain people I'm full on flight and freeze, like full on gone, bye. And then certain people I'm full on fight mode, like I need to solve this, I need to solve this now, So I think that it's also like walking through and being aware that, and I think it's scary not knowing, well, which side of me is going to come out and how am I then going to deal with that, or which side of them is going to come out when I thought they were more of this type, but now I'm seeing this. But different kind of like phases of our life and different situations and different dynamics, relationship dynamics, bring out different responses also, I feel like.
Yeah, I've honestly, like, I think that one of the biggest takeaways that I can say as a man that I've learned like of late is that when your woman is coming with some kind of situation that they're experiencing and they're full of stress in that moment, and they come to you and they start expressing this, right? And it's getting very heated and there's a lot of emotion and a lot of energy, is that from a man's perspective, we have this built into ourselves that we want to kind of fix straight away, or we want to solve whatever it is that your partner is bringing to you. The biggest takeaway for me of late actually was that if I just am with my partner in that moment and I'm just holding her in that moment, I'm just with her, I'm not immediately saying, oh, but you didn't try that and you didn't do this and you didn't, trying to give a solution or trying to fix how she's feeling. But I just show up and I'm just loving kindness and I'm just there and I'm just, babe, I got you, like I'm here. And I allow her just to go and just to voice it and just to let it out. That is so much more healing and it creates so much more space. And essentially, a lot of times, all it is actually just a hug, and so a lot of times in relationship, what I can imagine, because I've experienced it myself, but as soon as your partner brings you something and they're really stressed about something and worked up about something that's happened to them or that they're going through or whatever it is, that as a man, we want to fix. So, okay, I'm going to give you the solution now. You're going to do X, Y, and Z, and then you're going to be perfect, and you're going to sort this thing out. No. Relax. Take a breather. Allow your woman to go off in as much as she needs to. Hold the space lovingly. And after everything has been expressed, give her a big hug or whatever it is, but just hold that space. Don't say anything. Just be quiet. And in that, you find so much healing because it's like, you're not, she doesn't want to hear this. I know that, but she doesn't want to hear what your solution is in that moment, right? She probably already knows what the solution is in her mind, right? So just in that moment, just surrender, and just give loving kindness.
That's so funny. I literally recorded a reel to post today on that exact thing. I was like, sometimes we don't need a solution. We just need you to listen. We need to know that, like, you can say that.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Sometimes we need a solution, but often, and I can think of one of my really good friends who says to me even, she's like, listen, I don't need to be coached. I just need you to listen. And I'm like, sorry. Again. Because we do with sisters, like we want to think.
You go to coach mode straight away, like, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So
That is,
yeah,
I'm so happy I hear that coming from you. I really, like, that's amazing.
yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like in relationship, it's not always perfect, right? It's like there's obviously there are things that come up that you have to work through together, and then there are times where you get triggered and you're like, I need to just leave this space now, you know, kind of thing. But then I also heard this beautiful thing, and I heard it a while back, but I just believe it's so true in my own experience, is that when we are triggered for whatever reason, I read this and I heard this through this reel, but like you said, like, embrace the trigger, right? Embrace it, invite it in. This is truly where your work lies. So you can do 80 ceremonies. You can do all the healing work. You can do everything. But as you both rightly said, relationships are the things that bring you to that your spiritual core of how you're going to show up in this moment, and the work that you need to do in that relationship. And so that truly, for me, that's the spiritual work right there. Because yeah, we can go to the Himalayas and we can pray. And I mean, no doubt about it, like that is creating a big, what do you call it? It's adding a lot of value to so many different planes of existence, right? The monks in the Himalayas. But it truly comes down to also, like, how are you in your relationship? And you can see where you're at on your spiritual path in how you show up in your relationship.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time today. Honestly, like, I feel like we've learned so much.
We've lost you, Charles. We've lost your microphone.
We've lost Charles.
I forgot I turned it down. That was my solution to getting the
crickets to go away.
Turned someone down and it went away. But thank you so much for sharing all of that. And you just have so much wisdom, and it means a lot for us to, especially since we do work with men, and you can do all the research in the world, but we still don't know what it's like to be a man. So thank you for sharing, from that point of view and from that healing. You have so much wisdom, and I'm appreciative that there are men like you out there doing this work and sharing. What an incredible story you have. Again, especially being in this industry and in this environment and world that I live in, I see a lot of this. So, what an incredible success story that you have to share, and so many lives are going to continue being changed from your testimony. So.
Thank you so much, Charles. Yeah, it's a great honor to be with you both here today, and just the work that you're both doing too. I feel like it's such selfless work, and to be holding spaces for men in this way, and just the inspiration that comes from it. So I feel that, and I also believe that, I want to also say, like, as an example, like, the vulnerability that we can share with each other. I think that is, we spoke about this earlier, but that is the key. And then also that, okay, if you've been mindlessly scrolling and you go to your feed and you looking at women on your feed and you keep scrolling through that there is an awareness that comes. And it's a self-awareness that, wait a minute, like, what am I doing here, in this moment? Because let's face it, we all get caught in these distractions, right? And we also, I feel like, in terms of what we're feeding our brains and what because there's constant subliminal messages that we receive from, especially through the interverse. So like, and networks and so forth. So it's like, so really paying more attention to that when those things do happen, because I feel like even myself, like, and to be vulnerable in this, I find myself also sometimes like I'm going on Instagram, and then all of a sudden I'm scrolling and I'm seeing women boobs, bums and things like that. And I'm like, wow, dude, like how are you filling yourself? You're filling your consciousness with this on a constant basis, right? So how does that play into then your real life relationship? And like, how does that play into the way that you see and perceive women? And so it's like, it's a big thing, because I know even in the circles that I'm in, like, men share about these things, and it's like, we have to kind of pay attention to those things, because at some point it starts to lead us down a road that we don't really want to go down, right? So yeah, thank you so much, both of you, for your beautiful work. And yeah, it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
I just want to add to that. I feel like everybody should, after this, go check your feed, check who you're following, and just do a cleanup on that, because that stuff is what you are seeing and what you're putting in your head. And it is so true. So thank you for actually bringing that up. You actually answered my last question in what you just said. That was just so perfect. I think it is awareness. I think that's what it boils down to. What is the one thing, the best piece of advice that you could give to people who might be struggling, like in their trauma, disconnected from their purpose, feeling stuck? It's that feeling, not knowing what to do and too scared to let go of who they think they have to be. Like, what is that first step, first truth, first action that you would offer them right now?
It's a powerful question. It's almost sitting in myself, like going back to my 34-year-old or 33-year-old self, and sitting in that and knowing, this unbearable suffering that was taking place inside, right? And just like, I can't physically can't carry on doing this anymore. Like I just can't. For someone that's really stuck and that's struggling in their lives, and that have been, well, we've all been through trauma in some shape or form, right? So it's like, that feeling of being stuck, what is that, right? It's something in your nervous system that doesn't allow you to actually move forward. Or maybe it's a part of yourself that's self-sabotaging your life. And I think that if there's one sentence of wisdom that I could give related to this, is the acceptance of the brokenness, the acceptance that we have all of these parts, right, at play, and the acceptance that all of these parts have a higher intention for us, whether it's a self-sabotage part, whether it's a part that's the inner critic that says, you're not good enough, you're not worthy, you're not going to make it. Whatever part it is, the traumatized part, the part that's been traumatized, the part that has resistance to move forward, all of these parts is coming to this greater understanding that all parts have a highest intention, and that once you accept the brokenness, then you can also accept what is in each moment, and therefore stepping into softness, stepping into kindness with yourself, gentleness with yourself, knowing that whatever you've been through, whatever hardships, whatever traumas, whatever heavy past that you carry, you don't have to carry those stones anymore. Like we carry these stones on our back, like we feel we have to carry them. And maybe that's also part of this self-inquiry into self. Like, who am I? Am I these rocks from the past? So I gave you a bit of a long-winded answer there, but I think
Beautiful.
it's this
That
acceptance
was
of the
great.
brokenness, right? Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the work that you do, for who you are, for how you show up, and for being an example to people, to showing people what's possible. So I honor that in you. And thank you for coming on the show today.
And please share with us your socials so that listeners can go follow and get more wisdom from you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm actually on. It's an old handle, but it's Jungle Joe 333. They can find me at Jungle Joe 333 on Instagram, and I'm open to receive. I have a website on there, so if anyone wants to come through there, I truly do believe, like, I'm not the biggest marketer in the world in that sense, but I truly believe that, like, the right souls will come when they should. And that's kind of my motto for now. But I'm also like wanting to step more into that whole realm. Like your inspiration of like showing up every freaking day. It's like, I'm just like,
Every
flip, this
day.
this woman's like, she's going for shit. I'm just like, whoa, this is big, you know? So I'm like very inspired by it.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
You should see Chelsea's Instagram if you think I show up.
Really, Charles? Are you guys are like you next level, eh? Shush.
We have a nice little yin and yang. I'm very, very blessed to have Kate, because she does the work and I'm over there just like, no, I need to post. Need to post. Need to post. Like,
You inspire me to post. I'm like, I'm going to do it. 3 posts a day. I'm going to do it.
yeah. And she's been doing it.
Yeah.
She's been doing it. Yeah. I was posting 8 times a day, for about 6 months. And I just
That's
I
it. It's
slowed down for a
discipline.
bit and now I'm speeding back up again. For me it is also it's my therapy. It's my outlet. It's my way of voicing. That little girl has so many things to say. Sometimes people are like, "Are you good?" I'm like, "Yeah." Third grade Chelsea just had a day today. So we needed to get it out. So, anyways, thank you so much for coming on the pod. We're so grateful for you. Everyone, go give him a follow, especially the gents on here. It's great to see another gent thriving
Thank
and who's not
you
thriving.
Thank
so
you
much.
so
I'll see you in yoga.
much. I'll see you in yoga soon. Thank you so